Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Open Up the Workforce. I'm your host, Ahva Sadeghi, co-founder and CEO at Symba. Today, we have a really exciting episode, one that actually I've been looking forward to for quite some time. I'm joined by Mr. Jeff Gallimore, Chief Operations Officer for U.S. National Accounts at Zurich Insurance. And he's actually been named recently this year's Subway's most influential executives in corporate America. And I think there's many reasons as to why you've received that acknowledgement, but we're so excited to have you on the show today, especially this is the first time I've interviewed a COO for this podcast. So I'm excited to learn more about your role. But before we get started, can you share a little bit about your background, your career story? What's led you to this place?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me today. And as we get into our conversation, I think you'll find that I always love sharing my story, and there's a variety of reasons. And so to get into your first question, my background or what led me to insurance, et cetera. So I'm very similar to many folks in this industry. Well, I say, like many others, I didn't find insurance. Insurance found me. Really coming out of school looking for a job. I don't want to date myself too much, but when I was looking for my first job out of college, it's much different than how people look for jobs today, right? I was in want ads in the newspaper. So I don't know if folks even know what that looks like anymore, but I'm sure there are a couple of people that might be able to resonate. But the insurance industry is really cool. There's a plethora of opportunities. One of the reasons why I enjoy being part of this industry is just because of that. As I look throughout the years, 30 plus years now, kind of started at the bottom, and I was just looking for a job. But over the years, I realized I had a lot of mentors along the way that were absolutely able to point me in the right direction at the right time when it was kind of a fork in the road. In retrospect, I understand that now. It's all about doing your best at work and putting your best foot forward. And one of the tricks of the trade that I share with others that I mentor is don't be afraid to speak up and share your point of view, right? That's how you get noticed. That's how you're able to move forward. So again, I've been very fortunate in my career to work hard and then have people actually tell me to take a left turn or a right turn, or actually in some instances, stay put and don't look to do anything right now. That would have been the best choice at the moment.
Absolutely. And I remember when we first connected, you told me the story of one of your mentors who had said to you that they see you as the COO. They see you really rising to that. Can you just share a little bit more about, I guess, that experience and that journey? Because that's amazing.
That was an experience. And so, this brief story, I was walking into what was called the head of administration for global energy at a firm I used to work for, AIG. And I was giving her an update, and I was halfway through, and I noticed she really wasn't paying attention to what I was saying. She was just kind of staring at me, and that was an awkward feeling to have in that moment. And I kind of stopped with my update, and she just said to me, "You're going to be COO one day." Now, at that point in my career, I had no idea what a COO did. I certainly deposited that information because I had a lot of respect for her. And by the way, she's my mentor still today, Joe Dean Urban. I'm going to give her a shout out. And I just went about my business to kind of learn a little bit more about what a COO did. And so I would say just over the years, doing my research, I got an appreciation for what a COO did day to day. When this opportunity presented itself, the role I'm in now, my former boss left the organization. I was named interim COO, but I knew right away that I was going to go for the position wholeheartedly. And so what did I do? I called up my mentor, the person who told me that I was going to be the COO, and shared the news with her. And of course, she was extremely excited. I asked her, did she in fact remember saying that to me? Her answer was, no, I don't really recall saying that. But if I said it, I have to be right. So let's meet on Monday so we can go through all the things you need to understand and be prepared for in order to secure the role. So again, real value in having mentors, real value having people that you can lean on. I'm very appreciative of the fact that she told me what she saw for my future, where at that time I had no clue what a COO was or what they did.
I love that story. It's so inspirational to me because I'm early in my career, but I've been so fortunate to have amazing mentors who've paved the way for me. I mean, my background, as I shared with you, is really actually in economics and human rights. So I had no business building a startup. I had no idea what I was doing. I did not know what the term close one or sales pipeline or any of that really meant. And I had an amazing mentor who guided me, actually let me sit and rotate and be an entrepreneur in residence at her startup that her and her husband had bootstrapped from ground zero and built up. So, it's really, really amazing to have these mentors who guide us and help us. And I'd love to understand, what is the role of the COO, especially when we think about some of opening up the workforce, creating career pathways? Because I find when I look at your role and job description, COO does everything.
That's part of it, right? But you got to pick your spots. And so I work in a part of Zurich North America called national accounts. We primarily focus on large corporate customers, right? So think about the Russell 3000, if you will, right? And so certainly the first Fortune 500, but we would say the Russell 3000 is the space that we play in the most. We do have a couple of businesses that are more on the middle market side and have some SME type feel to it. But in the main, it's the corporate customer. And so when I think about what a COO does in this space, it's multifaceted, right? I'm thinking about customer experience, right? Because some of these policies could be very expensive. They're necessary to have certain coverages in place, and there's certainly others that are discretionary in nature. But at the end of the day, when you're charging customers the type of money that we're charging them, they're paying for good claim service, and they're paying for the experience of what we have to offer to help them become a better risk. So I look at what are those capabilities that they need to enjoy, whether it's around data and analytics, whether it's around insights. How do I make sure that we're always providing best-in-class service capabilities and tools for our customers and brokers? And then from an internal perspective, I want to support the 6 businesses that are going to market to sell these products to our customers and engaging with their brokers, right? Putting them in the best position to win. So that's coming with innovative processes. That's coming with innovative tools. That's trying to be ahead of the curve and really understand what the market demands are. And not only be the back office and making sure the policies get out the door and if problems arise, making sure that they clean up. I've actually sold and convinced many parts of our organization that, and really for us to hit our vision quest, I need to drive a market-facing operations organization. And people look at me initially and say, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, if you really want to mitigate challenges, I want to be involved in every aspect of the value chain, deliver the capability and the service where I can, and then mitigate things from going wrong versus folks throwing stuff at it over the wall and saying, Jeff, can you please help me get this cleaned up as quickly as possible? I'd rather be in a place where we have a small amount of issues to contend with versus a bunch of things that I have to really struggle with day in and day out. So that's how I look at our business. That's how I look at my role. And simply put, I bring people together to achieve common goals. When you think about strategy, it's a beautiful deck. It sounds great, but it doesn't activate anything, right? And so you get people to rally around that. And while I'm helping develop the strategy with other business leaders, I'm also very close to the people on the ground that do the work. So I have my ear to the street, so to speak. And so when I'm putting those bullet points on that beautiful slide deck together, I'm actually going out on the floor and testing with folks whether they will actually work or not. And then from time to time, I go, oh, wow, that sounded great, but I need to make an adjustment because there's a couple other steps that need to actually take place before we actually get to that destination in the slide deck. Right? And so hopefully that resonates.
That resonates a lot. And I think about how important that type of work is in almost every single job and role, right? Whether you're a product manager, how are you thinking about how that design will actually influence the experience for people using that technology, and not just putting the designs and making them beautiful, but is this actually accessible to people? And is this actually going to be used? I love that word you use, activation. Because so much time we get excited talking about innovation, we get excited talking about strategy, but like, where's the execution? When and who's holding that accountable?
That's right. And so that squarely fits into my box, right? Really making sure we execute in accordance to our plans, then also have the fortitude to understand where we need to make adjustments if things change, whether inside of our strategy or externally if the market starts to evolve, right? So we need to also be agile and nimble.
Absolutely. I find that so much of even in my role is like scenario planning, option A, B, and C. And if A, then option A and C, and then if B, option A, B, and C. It's really important. And I love that idea of mitigating in advance, right? Not putting band-aids or just trying to solve all these fires. How are we thinking 5, 10 years ahead so that we're not just trying to catch our breath but we can be ahead of the game?
That's very relevant and very important in the business that I support, right? So that's what we do day in and day out. And sure, there's always technical things to solve for, but I really want to make sure my team is always thinking about the future and we're setting ourselves up for what the future may look like.
Yes, and insurance, that's a critical skill. I know you said that insurance found you, and it's funny you share that because I told you my sister in insurance, and there was actually an app when she was in college. She didn't find it in a newsletter, but she swiped right on the company. And they were kind of like almost like a dating app kind of thing, but that's how she got her first internship. And she said, I never would have thought insurance, but it's been so impactful and the career pathways have been so clear and they've been so empowering with her growth and development, supporting her through business school. So I think it's really exciting once you're in it. So I'd love to get your thoughts on what do you think the insurance industry needs to attract the next generation of talent? We're seeing there's a big need, and you don't usually grow up saying, I want to be in insurance industry, right? You usually have a doctor, lawyer, engineer, astronaut. So would you shed some light on what the insurance industry needs to do?
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. But I'm going to take a step back to kind of share a little bit of what I think and how the insurance industry has been run so far, right? So this is not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's an important fact to note, right? There's a lot of nepotism in insurance, right? If you bring your family and you bring your friends in, it's a relationship business, right? So whether I'm at a broker or a carrier and then vice versa, you find children of people in different parts and in different companies in the insurance industry. So that's one aspect that continues to go strong. The other aspect is really meeting prospective employees where they're at. And so that means to show up on college campuses. You got to kind of market and advertise different. Zurich being focused primarily in historical context on larger corporate customers, we have a feel for being the experts in this space. We're kind of juxtaposed against maybe a Hartford or a Travelers that are on TV commercials and they're a little bit more of a household name. And then smaller companies have an opportunity to grow into the larger space. That's been a challenge at Zurich, but we're starting to change that a little bit just through some of our engagement with colleges, HBCUs. We did the Zurich Classic last year. We had a really good engagement with Dillard University, a local school there that happened to be at HBCU. So we wanted to dive in because we're very much about the community. If you do any research on Zurich, you'll see how much we're into community investment and just really thinking about the greater good of the planet and beyond, right? And so meeting young folk where they're at, actually trying to make insurance a little bit more appealing than it may look like on its face, right? Just based on a lot of things that I shared with you earlier, there's a plethora of jobs in an insurance company. So Jeff, what are they? You could be into finance. You can be into economics. You could be a lawyer. You could be a straight salesperson. You can lean into actuarial. You can lean into IT. You can lean into operations. And it goes on and on and on and on in terms of the diversity of roles that are inside of an insurance carrier. So you could absolutely make a career in insurance. I've been in this industry for 30 plus years, right? And you could jump around to different disciplines if you see that as something that you want to do, or you can remain in one discipline. I've been in operations and technology my entire career, but I tell folks that I'm multilingual, meaning that I can speak a little operations, a little technology, and a little underwriting, right? And so that lies what I consider to be my secret sauce in terms of how I connect people together for a common goal. So again, lots of different opportunity inside of an insurance carrier. There's broker partners, right, that actually engage with customers directly and represent them in finding the best insurance program. We like to think that we have the best program, Zurich. And then you also have just risk management, right? And there's risk managers at companies as well who actually look after their insurance products and making sure that they have the best fit and they're engaging with the right carriers to satisfy their needs. And so again, such diversity in the space. And if you think about claims, there's third party claims adjusters, there's all kinds of other service capability that are out there that you can consult with and understand a little bit better what you need so that when you're ready to purchase insurance, you're well informed.
Yes, I think it's really exciting for a lot of Gen Z, especially as they think about joining an organization. That's one of the top things that they think about is career navigation, skilling, and having those opportunities for long-term professional growth. And I think what we're seeing in the industry is a really big push to finding a role that will provide career security. Where can I stay? Where will I be supported long-term? And I think it's really exciting that they can also sometimes find themselves, because I'm a big proponent of learning on the job. I'm not really using many of the things that I studied directly, so I learned so much getting my hands on the field, getting actually a lot more experience. So how does an organization like Zurich thoughtfully set up these types of pathways and programs that enable this agile movement? Because it's not easy for a large org if some individual says, I actually want to do this now. Sometimes there's a lot of processes or things that loops you have to go through. How do you make that transition possible?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we completely cracked the code. This is something that we're actively working on, testing and trying to figure out. Certainly post-COVID, COVID really put a different perspective on things, and we had to kind of download them and understand them in context. So I would say we had a pretty decent program and pathways that people can kind of look into, become familiar with, understand the recommendations, etc. Right? But those are just documents, this literature, the things that you can read through. It doesn't literally tell you how to make your way through, right? And so that's where I believe a manager could be your best advocate. They could be someone that you can really depend on to understand what's required in your job today, what would be required to get to the next step, and then where do you see yourself in the end, and also giving you some recommendations on what some important roles, or here are some special projects you can jump into, or here's some other things you could be involved in that actually would give you visibility and maybe an opportunity to meet folks that can enable you to get to your desired role, let's call it 5 years from now, right? And so there isn't a single path that I would say, oh, all you got to do is go look here and then do this and then it happens, right? It's a little bit of trial and error. It's also some self-reflection around what I like and what I don't like so much, because you may be going after something that looks really cool on paper and they end up figuring out, I don't really like that. Right. And so the other aspect I think is important is more on the individual side is not, I want to say patience, but then that kind of sounds like I'm telling people that they need to go slow. That's not what I'm saying. Is more of recognizing what you know and what you don't know, then understanding what's required, and then figuring out how to get that knowledge or that exposure, etc. And a lot of that comes down to building relationships, right? And so, and why it's challenging in this day and age is post-COVID is that we're in a hybrid working environment, right? And so it's recommended that you come in as often as you can. We do have a preferred amount of days in the office based on role, right? But for me, and I'm not saying this has to be for everyone, making those connections with the right people and understanding what makes them tick, and then a little bit about how they got to where they got themselves to, enables one to start developing, craft their own plan. I think that is challenging to do if you're by yourself all of the time. I just find that to be very challenging. Now, in the same breath, there are roles that don't require you to be interacting with a lot of folks. And depending on your circumstance and where you are in life and thus maybe who you are, that might be the preferred route. But understand that that comes with its benefits, and then it also comes with its challenges depending on where you see yourself going, right? And so I don't broad brush anything. I don't believe there's a one size fits all, but it is about, do you understand what your goal aspirations are? Do you understand what's required to get there? Have you talked to people about it? And have you got a fulsome understanding of how to get there? Those are the things that you need to kind of go through, understand to best position yourself moving forward.
I appreciate that perspective a lot, because I know this return to office or hybrid work kind of been some debate. And from our research, it's been interesting. We've seen a lot of the younger generation, they want flexibility, but they're actually very eager to go into the office and build connections. But the challenge is a lot of managers are eager to be at home, and it's really difficult to make space for these mentorship experiences where you can just go knock on someone's door and say, ask for feedback, or if you have an open door plan, get real-time insight, or just go grab coffee together. And I find that having to create mentorship in this hybrid world is challenging, because you need to set time on the calendar. You'd have to come in with an agenda, a plan. It can't happen maybe as organic. And as we're seeing a big shift towards technology and AI, I think the people experiences are going to be the skill sets that we need to hone in on a lot more. So, and it's a muscle. I realized the first event I went to after COVID, I was like, this is a little bit harder to tell stories and talk, just slightly, because I was like, I haven't been doing this for like a year or 2 years. Yeah. So I really appreciate that perspective.
You're spot on. And I think it is a very interesting dynamic in which a younger talent wants the flexibility, but they are absolutely wanting to be in the office. And I have a couple of younger mentees that I've met over the last year and engaged. They're always here. They always have great questions. They're always trying to pick my brain. And so that's where all the learning takes place. And to the extent that they get activated, there goes that word, to get activated, right? Mm-hmm. They start to engage with other colleagues differently as a result. I clearly see those as the ones that will put themselves in position to move forward, probably at a clip that would be faster than those that may be electing to spend more time at home. Then somebody will say, well, that's not fair. And I understand why they may say that, but human interaction is key. You can certainly look at metrics and productivity and all those things, and they contribute to the cause and people being able to move forward. But those are the more tangible things. The intangibles are those relationships, those conversations, those hallways discussions, those coffee clutches, the time you go to the pantry to get water, up and down the elevator, what have you, right? And those experiences are invaluable.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that creating in that environment is really critical. When you think of the term activation, my brain goes to chemistry. I actually did a lot of science fairs growing up, and I think about how do you create an environment in that petri dish that really can create that activation? What is the catalyst? What enzymes do you need? What do you need to take action? And I do think it's so much about that environment, cultivating it, and really making sure that you have that set up. And part of what I admire many of things about Zurich, but the programs that you have is really amazing. And I know you've received some exciting recognition about the apprenticeship program that you've launched and spearheaded, especially because apprenticeships we see have been really taken off in Europe and are kind of new in the United States, but we see that you've been really spearheading that. And I also noticed that you've founded the Zurich African Ancestry Alliance, ERG, and also launched the Propel Inclusion Cohort program. So there's a lot of exciting initiatives that you've been leading and working on. What are, I guess, some of the impact and results you're seeing from these initiatives you put together?
So as we call it, was an employee resource group. And like many organizations, they're just trying to give people a safe place to talk and to learn and to understand. That's when ERGs were really, really hot man, I can't remember how long ago that was now, but it was several years ago, probably like 6 or 7. And there was just someone in HR that said, you'd be the perfect person to start this up. And then certainly I had a lot of passion around mentorship. And so we put it together. It's since had 3 or 4 leaders that come at me. I'm still part of the employee resource group and provide this leadership and coaching around it. And so, again, this is a safe place for people to talk, to learn, to engage, and to develop themselves so they can go out and understand what makes sense for them as individuals inside of an organization like Zurich. We touched on the apprenticeship program, and you're spot on in that the programs and these thoughts were kind of birthed in Europe. As you may be aware, Zurich is a Swiss company, and so part of Europe. And so therefore, we learned from our colleagues overseas. And then in partnership with one of our larger broker partners, Aon, we've done a lot of great work in trying to foster the growth of apprenticeship programs in insurance across the country. We've been very successful in that endeavor. Started off in Schaumburg, Illinois. I led a cohort out of New York where we partnered with a local community college. And so I'm very much into that growth and development, and gives folks a great opportunity to engage in our workforce and learn more about insurance, right? I've been happy to witness and see people successfully go through the program and after 2 years land full-time jobs at an entry level, grow, get engaged in all kinds of other activities. The confidence that you see them build over that 2-year period is tremendous. And not only myself, but other leaders rally around them and make sure they're always available to help support them, both in school, right? Because they're in school and Zurich sponsors them for their education. And then at the same time, they're learning a discipline within this organization. So hopefully after they complete the program, they have a full-time gig with us, right? And so that's been working very, very well. You mentioned Propel. So Propel was a program, and actually I didn't develop it. I was in the first cohort of participants.
Oh, wow.
And again, I was probably more of a senior leader in that program, but that was actually before I became COO. So I like to think that exposure and some of the development that I received that program positioned me well to seize the opportunity when it presented itself. But again, really great program. Really focus on leadership skills, development, finding your voice, really understanding your own style and being confident in that. So it was a really solid reinforcing program for me personally. And I know for some of the folks that were a little bit junior that I also have found a lot of value in the program. So it continues, and it continues to grow. And then there's probably 2 other programs that Zurich has been able to develop under the guise of Propel program for more junior employees, right? So everybody has different needs based on where they're at in their career journey. And so that's the one thing I can absolutely say about Zurich is that they try to put their best foot forward relative to the growth and development of their employees, right? It's a great thing, but also sometimes strategically it's a tough thing because some of our competitors just wait for us to get them all trained up and then they want to offer them more money, right? And we're known for that. So at the same time, I'm trying to figure out unique ways to protect our talent too after we invest a couple of years of training into them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I always look at these programs and all this wraparound support. It's like investing in the stock market. There's these longer plays, or you can do these quick wins, but these are longer plays. And so, yes, you do need to protect your assets because you've spent a lot of time working and developing them. And it's so cool to hear that the Propel program is actually for stages as well, not just wraparound support for the entry level. And I think we need more of that. I don't think a lot of companies are doing that. And so in this heat of where it's been at least a couple of years since AI has been a little bit more mainstream, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, as a true innovator leader, and I know Zurich just recently won the Business Innovation and Insurance Innovation Award. How is AI impacting your work or just insurance at large?
Well, I would say the first order of business is to make sure you calm people down. It's not going to take every job that's out there, right? Mm-hmm. But there are some real benefits in terms of, you think about some of the more mundane work and some of the things that are rote that you do over and over again to certainly support a lot of data input, a lot of different things where you're trying to translate information into meaningful context that's usable for underwriters, underwriting, and other roles, right? And so how do you triage through a large package of information and pull out the pertinent information that's required for underwriting would be one use case, right? Another use case be the prioritization of work based on certain attributes that we like and or dislike, right? And so it's not going to talk and shake someone's hand and close a deal with confidence, right? And so you just got to think about the workforce, the various roles that are in play today, and then which ones may evolve as a result of emerging technology, such as AI, right? And so that's how we think about it as an insurance organization. Obviously, there's some very specific use cases that may create some of our secret sauce, so I wouldn't be sharing those with you, but anything that you can think of where you just need, deep analysis quickly, AI could be a great solution for you, right? As it relates to the Business Innovation Award, and so we're very pleased with the variety of awards that we seemingly win year over year. I think the last one, I don't know which one you've seen, it might have been on the Exporter Solution Package, where we're selling a product online for SME type businesses, where we're taking a lot of the friction out, particularly if people need to travel really quickly. They want to make sure they have the right protections in place. We have an online platform where they're able to produce a quote and get a policy seamlessly, unless there's some challenge with the risk, right? And so that's been really cool to see being rolled out. Our group captive space, we came up with a new product offering. We also recently do a lot of things with our broker partners where we do international education for them, so they actually could understand how to sell those products to their customers as well. So wherever we see a need, and it's interesting, innovation could be technology, it could be the way you work, it could be the way you talk. Innovation comes in a variety of forms. It's just trying to attack a problem in a different way, right? And so I keep my eyes and ears open for that on a regular basis. And honestly, that's just the way I come to work every day.
That's so important. I think when we think about innovation and also just really focusing on the problem and then we can spend time on the solutions, but the solutions can come in a variety of different forms. Coming back to the idea of activation, the way I think about AI in a lot of ways is for me, it's a catalyst. It's not going to close the deal, but it is going to maybe propel me faster, help me think creatively, craft up follow-ups with different scenarios as well. So I love using it as a toolkit in my back pocket. And I'm so grateful for your time on this podcast with us, Mr. Gallimore. I wish we had a lot more time because I have so many follow-up questions. You've had such an amazing career. And one question I always like to ask every speaker that we have on this podcast is really around our mission at Symba, which is open up the workforce. And we began as a social impact project with late Congressman John Lewis. And our mission is to help create equitable access to wealth creation and jobs. Yeah. And so this is a more open-ended question for you. But what do you think that leaders, executives need to do in order to open up the workforce for the future?
That's a great question. I think the way I think about it, maybe I could dovetail on the innovation question a little bit, right? Another one of my taglines is to make sure that you have pretty good peripheral vision. And so we're always focused on the business objective, delivering for our customers and brokers. Certainly there's a way that we determine we want to do that as an organization, but it's very important to have peripheral vision to actually understand what's happening in and around you so that you can be dynamic and then pull in the resources that you need to actually achieve your mission, right? And so I try to avoid what I call this is the way we've always done it syndrome, right? If you have peripheral vision, you could be open up to innovation, but in innovative ways of how you can leverage people, resources in a very diverse way, particularly if you're trying to reach new customers and or a customer base that you haven't had the opportunity to engage with. So hopefully that's a good way to think about how to open up the workforce, because it can actually help you achieve greater success than perhaps you could ever imagine with this is the way we've always done it.
Absolutely. You bring in more people from different areas. You open up market opportunities, different segments, leads to greater business, leads to greater jobs. That is genuinely the most creative and nuanced answer that we've had on this podcast. I really love that insight. It really opens up my mind, and I'm excited to channel that in my work. Mr. Gallimore, thank you so much for being on this podcast. Thank you for the incredible work that you're doing in the insurance industry and creating access to opportunities for people in the U.S., all around the world. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
No, I obviously probably can tell I'm passionate about these topics that you and questions that you've chosen to ask me. So thank you for your time and actually selecting and wanting to talk to me. So I really appreciate you for that.
Of course. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Talk soon.
Thank you.